broadcasting live under the shimmering stars of Sedona, Arizona. UFO encounters, energy vortexes, the secrets of the Bradshaw Ranch, and spine-chilling paranormal tales. You're listening to the Mysteries of Sedona. And now your host, Dr. Claudette Lyons.
All right, well, welcome everybody. We are here in beautiful Sedona, Arizona for our first episode of Sedona's Mysteries. We have an exciting guest with us today, somebody that is known internationally for his role as not only a witnesser, but a participant with the Mysteries of Sedona. And that is our Tom Dongo. Welcome, Tom.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. It's such a beautiful day and perfect.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. We have a backdrop that many people come from all over the world to come and witness here today. So thank you for joining us. And we're going to get into some very interesting questions. So, Tom, what is it that originally drew you here to Sedona? And what did you find when you arrived here?
Well, I got tired of California, basically. If you didn't own a BMW or a Porsche, you weren't a great guy. So I've always been kind of just a down-to-earth person. So I had friends here in Sedona, so I came here. And I was only going to stay here a couple of years. I didn't plan on living here, but I've been here. I lived here 34 years. I'm in Cottonwood now, which is a few miles from here. But I'm a native now. I was here when it was only a few thousand people. Now there's, I guess, about 20,000 people, something like that. So I was never really interested in UFOs, in the paranormal, but I started running into unbelievable things here every day. People would see flying saucers. In fact, the place I used to have coffee every morning, the guy said, look out the window, and it was actually right up there in the mountains, and there was a UFO sitting right over the mountain, and a woman said, "Oh, I never see UFOs." I said, "Well, come over here for a second." So she goes, "Oh my God, it was a real UFO, a real ship." And this was about 30 odd years ago. So the things that happen here are miraculous. So it's still here, but you have to go back a ways into the canyons to really find the really incredible stuff. So I'm still here, and I've written 8 books that are very very popular. And my new book about the Bradshaw Ranch, this one, the Emerging Dimensions, is a very popular book.
Wonderful book.
Yeah, it's about the Bradshaw Ranch.
That's incredible.
And the vortexes, we were just talking about the vortexes in Sedona. And people say Anita Bryan discovered the vortexes about 40 years ago, and I was here just after that. And the vortexes are absolutely real. The first 2 years I lived in Sedona, I made my living doing vortex tours, so I could watch people. And there's more than 4 here. There's hundreds. They're back in the canyons, and the Indians knew the Sonawa Indians knew where to build their homes, and they built them right on the energy spots. I had a doctor friend, a physician, who had traveled all over the world to visit energy spots, and he healed with rocks. He actually healed with rocks, and the energy spots that I took him to, the Indian ruins, were. He was amazed. He says, "I've been all over the world and I've never experienced anything like this." So they're the vortexes. Nobody really knows what they are, but they're here. They're real, and they affect women far more than a man. I watched many women affect the vortexes would affect them emotionally. They break down, they cry,
Wow.
But a
Wow.
man rarely. And it was all mental healings that I saw. I never saw. Well, actually, I did see one medical, physical healing of a person,
Mm.
but it's mostly mental healings. They would, when they get home, a lot of them would call me and say, I can't believe it. I was affected by those vortexes, and what was wrong with me is no longer wrong with me. I don't have to do drugs anymore. I've heard that often. So Sedona is an incredible place. There's only other, really, there's no other place in the world like Sedona. Because I know people from all over the world that are experts in this sort of thing, and Sedona is very unique, and it'll stay that way.
Yes.
Um, so
Yeah. So you were drawn to Sedona and then you have stayed. You feel like it spoke to you, probably very similarly to how it spoke to me, and just invited you to continue to experience all of this grander paranormal, and as you talk about, even spontaneous healing.
yeah,
That's absolutely incredible. I feel, as I'm sure you do, that people need to know about Sedona.
yeah, they really do because it's it affects people. I mean, the proof is that the energy affects people,
Mm-hmm.
and in Pele in Hawaii, people try to take rocks off the mountain in Hawaii, and they send them back
That's
because
right.
they had such bad luck.
That's right.
And people have taken rocks from Sedona, and sometimes they say this rock healed me, and sometimes they say I had nothing since I've taken this rock. I'm in the worst bad luck you can possibly imagine. So,
Wow.
the red rocks are very. And by the way, the red is iron oxide. The oceans have come and gone here 7 times, and so the all the red it's everywhere, and it's iron oxide. If you scratch a red rock, it's white underneath.
Yes.
So yeah, it's an amazing place. And I've been on now. I've now have been on 103 worldwide radio stations. Talked to about 106 million people about this stuff, and it's I love it. I love it. It's
Never gets old, does it?
no, it doesn't. Well, I'm 80 years old, so it gives me something. It gives me something to look forward to.
Tom, what would you recommend that people that come to visit Sedona explore first?
Well, that's a good question. I would say, well, of course, look around, just drive around, see everything. But my favorite are the petroglyphs, the Sanawa. Now they're almost 1,000 years old. They were done 1,000 years ago. So the petroglyphs are in all the canyons, and some of them you can go to, like Red Canyon and Loy Butte. They're you can go to see them, but there's if you're a hiker, some of the like try to find newspaper rock. The Forest Service will never tell you where it is. Newspaper rock, but it's actually being watched by satellite.
Wow.
So you know, because there's no guard there. But the petroglyphs are wonderful, and so I would say look around a little bit and then go to the petroglyphs. See the Indian rock art, and some are scratched in, and some are painted on, and some are like the ones there's that it's called handprint cave. It's all the Indians sprayed from their mouth mud, and they put their hands on. So it's all hands, little hands from kids and big.
Yes.
So it's many hands cave it's very hard to find, but
Wow.
it's there, and
Wow.
so there's a lot of stuff. I really enjoy the petroglyphs.
That's amazing. Can I ask you a question about that? A lot of people come here and they join big tours. That's a big part of it, the big tours everywhere. Do you feel that the different energy centers here work differently when there's a large group of people versus when you get to kind of go off by yourself and have an interpersonal experience?
Well, it depends on how sensitive people are. 'Cause I've been doing this forever, and I did tours for 23 years, so I had a chance to have a lot of experiences with people. It really depends how sensitive you are. Some people are very sensitive to it, and some people are. But the Sedona energy, it does affect people.
Mhm.
So you have to experience it yourself in your own way.
Right.
Yeah, but that's it's that's why I'm still here after 34 years. So it's a because it's an incredible energy. I've had people from all over the world visit here, and I talk to them, Russians, you name it, and uh, I'd always ask them, and they would agree. There's no other place on this planet like Sedona, not this kind of energy
Mm.
and things that happen. So it's an amazing experience, Sedona.
Wow. And how many years did you do your tours here?
23 years.
Wow. I'm sure you met a lot of people from all over the world, huh?
Well, they were, yeah, it was, we went all over. I had a partner, and it was called Sedona Southwest Tours, and we would go all over the West. But my best tour was a UFO tour. It was world famous.
Mm.
And I got really tired, burned out on doing UFO tours. But we saw, I'd say 200 UFOs. The ships, and so we had some. I've talked about them in my books. The experiences we had with UFOs, and I loved it. I've been on. I'm on the radio a lot, so I love to talk about my stories. And we had a UFO came close to us one night. I mean, this was a physical ship, probably an alien craft from Orion or the Pleiades or whatever. And I would hit them with a green laser. I had a powerful green laser, and they'd react all the time because to them it was a weapon. It was a
Mm.
beam. A beam would hit the ship, and it would think that it's being shot at. So uh, I hit the ship with my green laser, and it started to pulse, flash like this, and all the women in my tour started screaming, and it would have made awesome footage if somebody behind me with a video camera and videoed this, as it was happening. So I that's one of the many things, and nobody ever got hurt.
Wow. What an
So
experience.
yeah.
Do you feel like when you've been out in the trails or on these tours, not only with people, but even just by yourself, that you feel like there's kind of an anomalous energy here, whether it's from a ship or just maybe some vortex energy, maybe some wormhole, however we consider it, that seems to have some form of communication, trying to communicate information to us?
Well, this hasn't happened in quite a while, but hikers used to hike in the canyons, and there'd be somebody invisible walking beside them. It's happened to me. In the brush, there'd be footsteps, two footsteps, like that, and they knew that they were in communication somehow. This happened a lot, especially in Long Canyon, which it's a long canyon. It's 6.5 miles to the end of it, but it happened a lot.
Wow.
So people think you're nuts. You talk about this stuff, but if you talk about to somebody that's had it happen to, then nobody they're not skeptical anymore because they had the same experience. So my books are full of these experiences that here in Sedona.
Well, Tom, this is getting very exciting. Love this conversation. We're going to continue. Let's take a quick break. All right, well, we are back in our live studio today. We are with Tom Dongo. This is the Sedona Mysteries. And what we're doing here, as you can hear, we are outside. We are not in a studio. We're outside live in Sedona under the sky. We have some birds. You may hear some wind, maybe even a helicopter or two. But today we're discussing some great topics with Tom Dongo. Tom, you are the author of 8 books. Can you explain those?
Yeah, when I first moved here, I lived with her. She's still my publisher. She's 89 years old. She still works every day. So I wrote a book. It wasn't meant to be a book, and I wrote it in 14 days. And she took it, and she had just hired a printer and a printing press. So she took it was a little pamphlet thing that they pass out for a week, but she took it and made it into a book, The Mysteries of Sedona. It's been in print now for 34 years, and it sold about 70,000 copies.
Wow.
So she started, her name's Melody, and so she got me into this whole thing.
Huh.
So then I kept running across just an enormous amount of experiences that other people had, that came to me, and I was writing a second book, The Alien Tide. I ran out of information. I had nothing, so I put the word out that I needed more stories, more stuff to talk about, and I got swamped by people wanting to tell their stories. So it's called The Alien Tide. So I finished that one, and then and actually this one, The Quest. This was my next one, The Quest. And this is I interviewed many people. This is actually my favorite book. Besides, my Merging Dimensions is my favorite, but this is all about why people came here. And it's interesting. There was a woman. She was a CEO of a major corporation in New York City, and she got divorced. She gave up her job, and she came here. I heard this often. She says, "I don't know why, but I had to be here." A lot of them would have, when they got here, they had visions of a crystal city here. It was very common. So they would, and I'd say, why did you give up all of that to be here? She said, well, I've come home. Yeah. I've seen the crystal city. So maybe, millions of years ago, there was a crystal city here, and they lived here. So they came back to home. Yes. And most of them said, I've come home. I feel like I've come home. Exactly. So so I spent a year writing a book about it, interviewing the people, it was fascinating.
It really is. Yeah, it's pretty interesting similarities if you think about it.
Yeah. So it's I've really enjoyed it. It's why I stayed here this long. So it's it's endless adventures.
Definitely. Are there any other books? You're talking about Merging Dimensions. Mm-hmm. We have The Quest. Merging Dimensions. What is this book about?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Merging Dimensions. It's all my fame, if you will, is the Bradshaw Ranch, and I spent 4.5 years with Linda Bradshaw. Linda sent me photographs. I was dying to go out there because I'd heard about the activity, and I was just getting into writing books about UFOs and the paranormal and high strangeness, and so Linda sent me a envelope with all these strange photographs, and they were orbs. And Linda Bradshaw and Linda Crystal in Pine Bush, New York, actually were the originators of orb photography in the world. When Linda Crystal, she's got a book, and I forgot the name of it, but they were the first ones that talked about orbs in the world. And after that, there was orb photography all over the world from Linda Bradshaw and Linda Crystal. For some reason, I don't know why. But so anyway, Linda sent me this envelope of photographs. He says, "Can you come out to the ranch?" So I did. I said, "Yeah." Shoe leather over the hill.
Sure. Yeah.
So I did. So I spent 4.5 years with Linda Bradshaw and her husband Bob. He had a UFO land right beside him, a ship. Wow. In the apple orchard. He said, "That's it. I've seen that. I don't want to see anymore." So Linda could never get him. He'd stay and watch television. There were incredible things going on, but Bob would not come out. In 4.5 years, Bob stayed and watched TV. All this incredible stuff is going on that Linda and I are world famous for this now. Right. This stuff. So anyway, that's been a
really interesting. Trip. That is so interesting. And just to let everybody know, there's definitely going to be links to all of your books here connected. Well, we're going to take a short break, Tom. Thank you. All right, everybody. Well, we are back in our live studio in Sedona, Arizona. We have the most amazing mountains behind us here. We're live with Tom Dongo and the Mysteries of Sedona. Thank you, Tom. Let's go ahead and ask a question about the Bradshaw Ranch. Everybody has a lot of curiosity around this ranch. Just tell us a little bit of your time, please, while you were there.
Well, most of my interviews are about the Bradshaw Ranch, and I've told this many times. Linda died 3 years ago, so she's no longer here. And interesting that the minute she died, she said, "I'm going home." Wow. And I was camping the day before, and I heard a voice in my head that said, I am all right. Don't worry about me. And Linda had just died. So anyway, but the Bradshaw Ranch, Linda and I had experiences, and I think these creatures that we were around, they rubbed off on us. I have amazing abilities. I mean, I can see into human bodies like an X-ray machine. I can do amazing psychic things, and so I see things. I'm one of the world's best remote viewers. I proved it.
Wow.
I taught it for 2 years with Maureen St. Germain, and so the stuff that happened with us on the Bradshaw Ranch, we would there was a portal there that was big. It was about 20 feet by 20 feet, and it was about 50 feet from the ranch house. Linda could see it and sense it, but I couldn't. She was way better than I was. But that's why the book is called Merging Dimensions. That's Linda's idea. So these things, when that portal was open, these creatures would flood out of it, and we felt at times like we were in the middle of Times Square, because they were all around us, and we could smell them. Some of them like it was roses, like sometime, or like burning sulfur and tar. And I just had to put a post on the internet on Facebook about an experience I had. We only could afford 35 millimeter film cameras. That's all we could afford. And we had probably 100 film crews from all over the world out there, but we had no money. Yeah. Now, like the Skinwalker Ranch is in Utah. I know the owner, and he's put millions of dollars into it. So Linda and I had point and shoot cameras and a 3 million candle power, 3 million candle power spotlight. So that's all we had. So we made the best of it, and some of our photographs are still world famous. That are in Merging Dimensions. So we had a heck of a time, and the things we saw. For instance, when Bob Bradshaw, when the UFO came over the hill and landed in the orchard, and it had orbs all around it, like 40 or 50 orbs about this. So they were glowing, spheres of light, and that really freaked Bob out. So we had endless experiences like that on the Bradshaw Ranch, and it's still happening. The U.S. government bought the Bradshaw Ranch. It's now leased by the University of Northern Arizona as a biological research station, but it still goes on. And I think this is kind of a joke, but maybe it isn't. But I think the University of Northern Arizona was going to develop the Bradshaw Ranch. They were going to bulldoze everything. But I think they read my books and it scared them.
Yes.
Because they were going to put dormitories there.
I see. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because one thing I noticed about the sign out there is it's for their experimental. And I was wondering if you really believed that there was actually anything happening there from NAU, if it was more kind of like a cover.
Well, there's another researcher that is a good close friend of mine. I've seen photographs of him. On the hill above the Bradshaw Ranch, there's a camera pointing straight up and another sophisticated camera pointing at the ranch. It's all solar powered.
Yes.
It's there. I've seen it.
Yeah.
And a government person said those are U.S. military items, cameras. So they're still there right now. So there's the government has a great interest.
Yeah.
In it. I've never had any experience with the government or over that, but the evidence is there. They're very interested in the Bradshaw Ranch.
Sure, things that make you say,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, gets your attention, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So do you feel that there's still more likely to have some sort of paranormal activity in that area?
Well, it changes. The paranormal activity never stays the same. For some reason, it changes. Yeah. And it has at the Bradshaw Ranch too. But there were some researchers that came here a few years ago, and I know all of them now. I know them well. But they came with the most advanced equipment you can buy. They had all. There were three of them. They spread out on the ranch, or they spread out around the ranch, and a vehicle came. The road kind of zigzags around, but there was a vehicle. The headlights. They saw the headlights. They came right down through the trees. Impossible. Even a tank couldn't do that. And it got to the ranch, and it went right through a big chicken wire fence. Drove through it, and then drove across the yard, and it's all furrows. But the vehicle floated across and turned around, and a girl, and they had just seen a man, in white clothes, just before the car came down, went behind the ranch, and then left. And a girl got out and went around behind and she was dressed in white, and went around behind the ranch. And first thing I said, well, did she have time to pee? Was that the reason she was there? And they said, no way. But she kind of ran back and got in the car. The car drove back across, a furrowed field, back through a chicken wire fence, and back up the hill through the trees. Impossible.
Wow.
But they recorded it, and they also had one of the researchers, the guy in the middle, that was near the windmill, which is everybody can see it when they check out the Bradshaw Ranch. But he got lost. He went in the wrong direction. Wow. He was only maybe 50 yards from the ranch house, and he went the wrong way and got lost. So somebody did something to him in the meantime.
Right.
Missing time kind of thing. Oh. And so this stuff fascinates me. I mean, yeah. The weirder it is, the better I like it.
Yeah, well, this is getting really good, which we knew that it would, Tom. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We'll be back. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to our live studio in Sedona for Sedona's Mysteries. We have our very special guest here, Tom Dongo, and he is no stranger to paranormal activity. So we're going to ask him today. Most people have probably heard this. Sedona is very famous for frequent UFO sightings. Have you ever seen a UFO?
Well, that's so many. I heard so many reports about different types of UFOs being seen. I started seeing them myself, and so I ended up writing books about them. And the Bradshaw Ranch, I have very high people that have given me information. I have one of my best friends, retired Air Force colonel. I talk to him all the time. So he was. I'll tell this story. One night, me and the colonel were out by the Bradshaw Ranch it was like a helicopter. It looked like a helicopter. A UFO can fake. They can look just like an airplane. I've seen them. And sometimes they don't make any noise. But anyway, there was this it was beaming a spotlight. It was like the searchlight on the ground, and the helicopter was flying around. It came from Sedona. It came right over Sedona. So my friend's name is Ron, and he said, we've been targeted. And I said, what do you mean? What I think. So I'll ask him later. He said that the beam hit us, and he said we'd been targeted. I'm going, what, targeted for what? Why? So he just said we were targeted, and he was. He's been my friend in fact, it's a long story, but he's been one of my best friends, Ron. And he was vice president of Lockheed Aircraft, Air Force colonel, and all kinds of other things. And so it's been really fun with he and I. He was one of the government's first remote viewers, one of the best, trained by Ingo Swann and Russell Targ. So anyways, so that he was with me that and one night, and this is the most dramatic thing. We were out there. Now I always had witnesses when this isn't something. I'm not just blowing steam out of my ears.
Sure.
We were out there one night, and we had 3 cameras. Cameras would always fail out there. We had one was a movie. You could film a movie with it. It was so expensive and complicated. All the cameras failed. And in the distance, I saw something that was sitting on the ground. It was about a quarter of a mile away, and it was an alien spacecraft being repaired. At the 5 o'clock, there were lights flying all around the alien craft, and they were repairing it. But you couldn't see anybody holding a light. It's just the lights were repairing it. So there was a huge blue light above it, and so we watched it. When we left at 10 o'clock at night, it was still there. So I asked Ron, I said, the Air Force colonel, I said, Ron, what do you think? Could that have been one of ours that got shot down? Something hit it, probably a missile. And he said no, it was alien, because it was one of us. You know, if it was one of ours, it would be surrounded by attack helicopters and people on the ground with machine guns. So if it had to have been alien. So, oh yeah, my friend had a new girlfriend, and he just wanted to impress her. So he said, well, we're going to go down there. We all tried to stop him. So we watched his car going down the hill, and there was a road there. He had a 4-wheel drive, and it was bumping along. And at one point, she says, you can let me out right here. I'm not going another foot closer to that thing. And it started when it was about 90 feet a disc, and it had flashing red lights all around it, and it started to pulse. I've learned when these things start to pulse, they're getting ready to shoot. It's a warning that their defense systems are going to shoot. Because every time I've hit so many of them with UFO, with a laser, powerful laser, and they would do that. Oh. And one night, probably the most dramatic thing was I was all women, and I said, you know, we saw these orange things in the distance, and I said, you know what, let's try it, and mentally, let's ask this thing to show up, visualize for 5 seconds, just 5 seconds, so we could see it. So, I mean, I had witnesses. I'm not just making this up. So suddenly, this thing, a quarter of a mile big, blew up right in front of us, and it was like, the funny thing was, it was shaped like a work boot, and it was orange, bright orange, and it had 3 huge flashing lights over the top of it, and then it flew off and went over Mingus Mountain, about 18 miles away, and we could watch it going through the trees. You could see it with the big the ponderosas up there. So, you know, my books are full of stuff like that. And then a week later, I had another tour, and they were all women, and I said, you know, last week those same orange lights showed up, so let's try it again. Let's in our minds ask it to you know, extraterrestrials love to play tricks on us, because they play tricks on me. I've written a lot of stories about it on the internet. So instead of a UFO showing up 18 miles away, like a Roman candle, was shooting these enormous balls of light way up into the sky. I mean, these things were enormous. They must have been, you know, 100 yards across, 2.5 seconds. And then did it in the other direction for 2.5 seconds to stop. It was actually exactly 5 seconds. So yeah, I've had some amazing experiences out there with hundreds of people that witnessed the same sort of thing, and you know, it's so I've written millions of words in books and on the, you know, stories on magazines and whatnot. So we never got hurt. Nobody ever got hurt. You know, people ask me, did somebody get hurt? I said, no, never.
Wow, that's incredible. This is very exciting stuff. You guys, you don't want to miss any more. We're going to have more questions for Tom. We're going to go to a quick break. Welcome back, everyone, to our live studio here in Sedona, Arizona. And we are with Tom Dongo in Sedona's Mysteries, who we're asking him a couple of very interesting questions. So let's begin with this enduring mystery of Sedona. Can you explain that from a metaphysical standpoint?
You know, that really is a good question. That's probably what got me into writing all these books and all these other stories. Because I would interview people, just talk to people, you know, and they were attracted here, like this was home. And so I wrote, and this one, the quest is full. This is written about all of that. That's the reason I wrote this book, The Quest. And I was fascinated by why they would give up everything, you know, and come to Sedona. And they would say, I had to be here. It's like I'm coming home. And I was fascinated by that stuff, you know, and it was very common back then. And they were drawn back here for a reason. And I couldn't understand it, you know. I kept interviewing these people, and people would say, hey, you got to go and talk to Joe Smith over there, you know, the experience he's had. And I just couldn't. There had to have been home here one time, probably millions of years ago. And they almost every one of them said, I was an Indian here. They remember being an Indian. I mean, some of them blew my mind. They described the experiences they had here as an Indian, and I'm going, wow, that's amazing. They could remember being an Indian. So that's really basically what got me into writing all these books and all these stories was that. That's the beginning thing, the metaphysical side of it. That drew people back here.
Sure, sure. Almost like it's kind of a gateway to, well, as your book, maybe merging dimensions or past lives, future lives, possibly.
The reason I do all of this stuff is I do things, worldwide, and I want to do. I'm hoping I can, like the 100th monkey thing, do something that will be a flash, and it'll spread around the world and change the consciousness. That's been my focus for a long time, and I've studied the last 50 years. I've studied human extraterrestrials, and I've been face to face with 3, and one of them, people that are into UFOs will know what I'm talking about. A tall white woman. I'm 6'2.5", and she was as tall as I was, and she had snow white skin, and everything she wore was black. And the tall whites don't like us Earth humans. So I have fun doing this stuff, and and people would say, "Are you crazy? Are you nuts? You ever been hurt?" No, never. So, and then. I was 5 feet, so I took the opportunity to, check her out, stare at her, and so Augie Nost, who was a show I've been on 5 times, he said, well, somebody was invisible. Either you were invisible, or they were invisible, or the people around you were invisible. And it makes sense. Actually, I'll finish the story because it was in the supermarket.
Okay.
And so a guy, he came around the corner. And I'm studying these because I know they're not human. This guy was about 6'5", big guy, and he had one green eye and one blue eye. Brilliant. And he kind of smirked a little bit and came over and took her by the arm, and they didn't look at me once. And I was almost as close to you as I was her. And then they, I get a big kick out of this. So she got a cart, and they're going down the aisle. My phone. So they were taking things off. This is my phone. I'll get it in a second. And they were taking things off the shelf, and look at and you can imagine they were saying, humans actually eat this crap, then they put it back on the shelf. They just went down. They didn't buy anything. But people say, well, what did they buy? I said, well, I wanted cheap white bread, cheap hamburger, and Twinkies. I did say that on the show one time, and people were saying, really? No, it's a joke.
Right.
So, and then the other time, I had a girlfriend at the time, and she was right here, and she witnessed it. An extraterrestrial girl materialized so close behind me. If I'd have turned like this, I would have knocked her down.
Wow.
And she looked about 27 years old, but she could have been 500, 800, 1,000 years old, because most of them are very old. And anyway, we talked to her. The interesting, there's a petroglyph, Sanaa petroglyphs, and that's what we went down there to see. And they had a guard on a trailer above us, and they were interesting thing. They were all sexual. The whole wall is, So she was asking, and her voice was so, we had to get this close to her voice, and she was asking questions about. And then so my girlfriend, she turned, went somewhere. And so I turned back, and the girl's gone.
Wow.
She disappeared.
Oh.
She materialized, and she dematerialized. And I'm not making this up, because my girlfriend was there. We both talked to her. It's a longer story than that, but so I've and she was an extraterrestrial, and they're here now. There are many of them. You could be an extraterrestrial. You could be an extraterrestrial, Luca. I'm not joking, because I've been around so many, And so I've interviewed countless people who have had face-to-face interactions with extraterrestrials. Some of these are world famous people. Yeah, they take to a while. Professor John Mack, that he was a Harvard psychologist. I was interviewed with him one time, and he was into it too. The chief of the psychiatry department of Harvard University. We had a long talk. He thought I was nuts. He thought I was a drooling dog or something. But 3 years later, the crazy stuff I was talking about, he was doing it. And then Harvard University really almost tried to fire him. So anyway, so it's a long story, but that's the kind of experiences I've had.
Certainly incredible. Thank you for sharing, Tom. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back soon. All right, everybody, welcome back. We are live in our live studio under the beautiful skies here, the Red Rocks of Sedona, for the Mysteries of Sedona with our guest, Tom Dongo. Thank you, Tom. We have another question here. This is a very interesting topic. You are known as a world-renowned remote viewer. Can you please explain to us what is remote viewing?
I'm glad you asked me that. I love remote viewing. And what remote viewing is basically is projecting your subconscious somewhere. Time and distance has no relevance, and then seeing what you see there. And this can be taught. Maureen St. Germain, who is one of the world's most famous writers, she and I taught it for 2 years off and on, and we had some really interesting experiences teaching people remote viewing. But remote viewing, one of the things I can't, I would love to spend the rest of my life teaching remote viewing. And people say, well, I get comments a lot, say, well, can you teach me? And I say, no, I can't, because I'm just overwhelmed with this stuff. But I can go back in time when I'm in a stressful situation. There's a village, probably 1,000 years ago, a Celtic village in England, and I like to sit there and just watch the people and the smell of flowers. The air is completely different from the air we have now, and just watch the people, and they smell bad. They must smell real bad. But the dogs would come over to me, sniff me, and the animals could see me, but humans couldn't. Right. So, this is just one of the things a remote viewer can do. And I had a psychologist. He's one of my best friends now. In fact, I just talked to him. A psychologist. He tested me for about 4 months. I was in Sedona, and he was in Durango, Colorado, and he would put things up. He was trying to see how good I was, and I had about an 85% hit rate, and which is far above the average. I think the average is 63%, something like that. But anyway, I proved what I could do. I had a psychologist that and his animals. One day I would materialize there over his office, the second story, and I would float through his office. I know this sounds crazy, but I would float through his office window and go down his curved stairs. He had a beautiful house in Durango up on a bluff, a hill, and. So one night I did that, and I told him, Tom, I will never look in the bathrooms. I always, I always look. So I went down. I was going down the hill, down the stairs, and I felt a feeling of terror, absolute terror, and so I went down, and I had showed up in a half an hour early, so I just sat there and watched. Watched Tom. He was dressed in cowboy boots and blue jeans and a red shirt, and he was making something. A remote viewer can smell. You can smell things, and it sounded like chili or something like that. And so I asked him what it was, and he said, no, it was an Italian dish. He's a master chef. It's an Italian dish, and it smells like chili, but it wasn't. So anyway, he would be on the phone, and I would be floating by him, and I said, Tom, I got to ask you a question. is there somebody else? We agreed that no, he wouldn't invite anybody over, just me and him, because he'd test me. And so I said, Tom, I told him what I felt coming down the stairs, and I said, Tom, is there somebody else in the house with us? He said, yeah, well, he was kind of sheepish, you know. He said, yeah, well, I invited my neighbor. He's sitting on the couch right there. I looked at the couch. I couldn't see him. There's nobody on the couch. So, and then somebody, when I was doing on one of these call-in shows, well, maybe he was somebody that didn't have a soul.
Oh,
maybe.
yes.
Because I couldn't see him, but I could see everything else in the room.
Interesting.
And he had an aviary, a very expensive tropical aviary. I'd go into that, I'd float into that aviary, and the birds would flock all around me. It had, those flowers and all that, so the animals could see me. One time I got right down to his dog, Binky. I looked at him right in the eye, and I said, well, you little blank, you can actually see me. And the dog's going, like that, so. Yeah. Did I get off track? I do that all the time.
No, it's wonderful, actually. You're telling us some good details about remote viewing. A lot of people question, what is this remote viewing? So you feel like people can definitely access these types of, maybe, I don't know if it's a realm or a state of consciousness, but you think it's definitely through the subconscious mind traveling.
Yeah, it's a mind, a mindset.
Sure.
And I'm convinced that we as a human race, we lost these abilities long ago, or somebody took them away from us. Because I can look at a human, most people, the average person does not have any idea how powerful they are.
Yeah,
seriously.
That's true.
Healing and whatnot, and the things they can do with their mind, because I can do it. Yeah. And I'm trying to train other people, because if people knew what I can see on a daily basis, they wouldn't believe it, for one thing. The things I can see, because I can turn it on, and I can see things that very few other people can. I've known some of the best. I've known many government remote viewers, the top trained government remote viewers, and they can't do what I do. So, and I was born with this ability. So I think I was probably in Tibet long ago. I was probably a seer in one of the villages, because the Tibetan villages all had a seer that would go around to the villages around Tibet, because they couldn't walk over and just see what was going on and report to the leaders of the council there. So yeah, I wish I could train millions of people.
Absolutely, I agree. All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back soon. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show. I am your host, Claudette Lyons. I am here with our special guest, Tom Dongo, for Mysteries of Sedona. We are in our beautiful live studio, Sedona, Arizona, out under the blue sky. We have the nice red rocks here. Got some birds. And what I want to ask here for you, Tom, is you had mentioned earlier that you would love to have an effect of the human consciousness so that there'd be a spark. In other words, like the 100th monkey kind of effect. You said you've been doing this work for approximately 50 years. And my question is, do you feel when you observe that timeline that you're seeing human consciousness awaken in that regard?
Well, I've talked about 105 million people on radio worldwide, and with Zoom and StreamYard. And I used to get, I gave up 3 times. I quit. I said I can't take any more abuse. I talk about now on radio the stuff I wouldn't have dared to talk about 10 years ago.
Sure.
Wouldn't have dared to, because I got verbally attacked so often. I gave up. I quit. But not now. The attitude of all people has changed. Now they're open to incredible new things. So that's an awesome thing in itself. Their minds are opening. Because I've said this many times. People say, well, aren't you afraid of demons? Aren't you afraid of devils? Aren't you afraid of Satan? And I said, you know what? Just the awareness of a demon will protect you from them, if demons even exist. But your fear of something, just your awareness of it. And this is what I talk about worldwide radio. I talk about everything. And I say, just your awareness will protect you. You know these things, you know about them. That will protect you from being hurt.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with before we end our amazing conversation today?
Yeah, I, I'm in league with some very gee whiz. Well, I'm going to talk about it. Okay, because my friend who said don't ever talk about this, don't ever bring my name up. He's been on the internet with us, so I want to talk about it. I know that extraterrestrials are sick and tired of what we're doing to ourselves, and we are destroying this planet, and they're getting tired of it. And this comes from a high level uh, uh, person that's talking about this, a whistleblower, and they're waiting. And he's the extraterrestrials. They're about 17 races of human extraterrestrials on this planet with us, and about 120 humanoids. And so, so this guy actually met them. He said it scared him to death. Not what they did, but just what their appearance was, which wouldn't bother me at all because I know what they look like.
Right.
But they told him that, and I've been waiting. This could happen any day. My friend's going to let me know. He's going to be with this guy. He's going to interview him personally because the guy won't tell him his name or anything. But he said that the extraterrestrials are so afraid of what we're doing to this planet that they're going to intervene. They're going to openly intervene. And good, I'm all for it. They're not going to attack us, but they're going to intervene. And because we're kind of getting out of control, and they're just going to kind of stop the impetus of what we're doing to ourselves and the planet. Because there have been 3 nuclear wars on this planet in the past. I've researched it. Because in Sahara, Pakistan, and other places, there's rock that's it's only a nuclear explosion, and the extraterrestrials are very afraid that a nuclear war will start, because they say we won't be able to stop it. We'd be able to stop some of it, but not all of it. So they do not want a nuclear war to happen on this planet.
Sure.
They openly don't want it.
Right.
So I'm all for it. Let's come on. We need our brothers and sisters from space. Because I've met them. I know about them. I've been talking about them for 50 years, and I know hundreds of people that have met extraterrestrials. And are they harmful? No. The vast majority are helping us. But there are some that don't. They say this is a free will planet. You can do whatever you want to yourself. But most of them are trying to help us.
Right.
So
wow.
That's what keeps me going.
Yeah. Very interesting information, Tom. We want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here today to answer these questions and just help people to open up our minds a little bit more. And thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.